much, Ali. And I am equally excited to be here. This is a topic that I've wanted to do for a long time. And let me just make sure that I share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see that. I'm just going to right out of the gate let everyone know this is a big topic. This could easily be a 2 or 3 hour presentation. I'm going to try and condense all of this great info into about 45 minutes. And this is a topic that I am so passionate about because as investment professionals, as wealth advisors, I also wear the hat of risk manager. And while a lot of our conversations are probably around risk and how we're investing the portfolio, conservative or aggressive, well, there's other risks in your financial life, and cybersecurity, identity theft protection. These are really, really big topics. And the theme of today's presentation is going to be awareness. If we have awareness of what the scammers and the fraudsters are doing, we're going to be able to have our radar up, or maybe our little spider sense that's going to be able to tell us, wait, this doesn't feel right. So that's really going to be what we talk about today, that you can implement right after this presentation. Hopefully you can take some of these tips and tricks and tools to protect yourself better in your digital footprint. Because when we think about cybersecurity and financial fraud prevention, there's a lot of ways to define what that means. I found this definition, I think it's my favorite, where it says that cybersecurity is the art of protecting networks and devices and data from unauthorized access. And I love that it uses the word art, because it's not just a pure science. There's not like this one silver bullet that's going to fix everything in your cybersecurity lives. It's knowing, emotionally, behaviorally, what we need to do in certain situations. And of course, tying all these best practices into the technology you use. Because if you just ask yourself one question, how much of your daily life relies on technology? I bet the answer is a lot. We've got phones in our pockets. Anytime that we interact with our financial institutions, or just the way that we connect with friends and family and work, it all has something to do with our digital lives. So when we think about cybercrime, there's a lot of different ways that criminals can try to get access to our information. And that's my goal today, is just to shed some light, or maybe a lot of light, on some of these areas. And as I said before, it's a big topic. There's a lot we're going to discuss. I'm going to try and condense this into the next 45 minutes, save a little room for questions at the end. Try to, if you have questions, try to use the chat function. That's a great way. We are going to have some moderators watching the chat. I'd love for this to be conversational and collaborative, but I also want to make sure I get all this information out there. So if we don't get to all of your questions today, don't worry, we'll make sure that I follow up and send you some great information afterwards. But with all that said, I just want to emphasize why we're talking about this today. And really, it's about protection. We want to make sure that you protect your personal data, your personal privacy, and ultimately, we want to prevent financial loss. These are big goals. On the one hand, it sounds very simple and straightforward, but as you'll see here in a couple minutes, it can get technical. We can really get into the weeds very quickly. So my goals are listed here to protect your information and your data. And just know that as being a client of Financial Insights, or working with an advisor here, please do think of us as a resource. So as we go through this, and if something just doesn't seem right in your digital life, again, that's where you can reach out to us. We have a lot of experience with this, personally, professionally. I'm going to share some stories throughout today's presentation just to kind of drive the point on some of these ideas. But again, we're here as a resource, of course, with all the financial planning and wealth management that they do, but also cybersecurity is something that we've got a little experience in as well. When we talk about cybersecurity, I just want to emphasize everything we learned today and everything we discussed is going to be helpful, but this is an always evolving threat. Things have changed a lot over the last few decades, and I want to highlight some of those and just also maybe point to the future a little bit when we think about what might be around the corner. And if we go back to the 80s, I did want to highlight this one cyber crime that kind of seems tame in today's world, but there was this idea called phone phreaking. And back then, someone figured out if they played a certain tone and these certain notes on a recorder, if they played that into a payphone. I'm also going to assume everyone knows what a payphone is these days. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I tried to tell her this story, and she didn't get it at all. But phone phreaking was a way to get free long distance phone calls. Again, seems kind of tame compared to what we're going to talk about here in a moment, but that was kind of one of the first instances of digital cybercrime. Fast forward to the 90s, more and more people are getting connected through the internet. I don't know if you remember getting those CD-ROMs in the mail from AOL, but computer viruses became this fringe idea that all of a sudden was a mainstream threat. You know, if your computer was running slow or if it just wasn't working for some reason and you recently just got your first email, people were trying to figure out what's going on. Computer viruses became more prevalent. Over the last couple of decades, ransomware, phishing scams, we're going to talk a lot about those here in a minute. And just one little highlight, I didn't know why phishing was spelled with a PH, but it actually has to do with phone phreaking. So the topic that we just discussed from the 80s, they kind of carried some of that over into modern day scams when naming them. I promise you, I didn't spell phishing incorrectly. That is how we spell it when we're talking about cybercrime. And then looking forward, artificial intelligence, the dark web, cryptocurrencies, these are all kind of ideas that are relatively new that, of course, cyber criminals are starting to use. So this landscape has changed a lot over the last 40, 50 years, and I'm sure it's going to just continue to change at a rapid rate. And before I dive into some of the specifics around the scams, I do want to highlight some of these statistics because this might be shocking or maybe it's not surprising to some of you in the presentation today, but I did pull some data from two different places. The first is from the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. They do a great job kind of monitoring everything. And of course, they are a resource if you need to report any sort of crime. But when they look back to 2023, so just a year ago, there was over 2.6 million fraud reports, over $10 billion reported loss. And if we think about the top crimes, the top frauds that you see there at the top, number one are imposters. And that's where we think about scam artists and con artists going back to the beginning of time, someone impersonating somebody to try and get your information. That's not new. It's just that now these criminals are using technology in a digital way to impersonate someone that you might think is a legitimate resource. But we're also going to talk about online shopping scams, prize or sweepstakes or lottery scams, and then of course, investments, fraudulent investments round out the top four from last year. Got a little more data from the FBI. So all of this information you see on the slide in front of you is from the FBI's website. They reported over $12.5 billion in losses from last year. And I just want to point out in the bottom left-hand side of the slide, you'll see who they're going after, the demographics of who these fraudsters are targeting. And it really is overwhelmingly in that 60 and up range. And when we think about, what types of crimes are kind of bubbling to the top and most prevalent, I think the chart on the right paints a nice story where if we think about what's happened over the last few years, so going back to the pandemic, the lockdown, all of a sudden we were forced to connect with our friends and family and maybe work digitally. So we were spending more time in front of the computer, more time on our phones. And we saw phishing scams just go up through the roof. And also, extortion, that's another one that really kind of peaked in 2020. Well, I'd love to think that these crimes are going away. That's always the hope and the dream, but that's not the case. Even though some of these statistics might have come down a little bit from their pandemic peaks, they're not going away anytime soon. So I'm a numbers guy. It's probably not a surprise to anyone joining us here today that's met me. I like to see these numbers. It does paint a nice story about what's going on across the US. Again, these are just kind of details about what's happening here in America. But when we think about where these criminals are around the world, these threats are just going to be coming more and more. So let's talk about it. I might have rushed through some of those first ones just because I want to get that information out there, but I want to spend most of today's conversation around awareness. Again, that is the theme. What should you be looking out for? And I've listed kind of the top scams that I want to talk about. So I want to teach you what these scams are and then give you some tips and tricks on how to hopefully prevent them. Or of course, we're going to talk about what to do if you feel like you might be the victim of one of these cyber crimes. So we're going to talk about phishing. We're going to talk about fake family members, and we're going to talk about the fake tech support, fake antivirus, and then one that I'm sure everyone on this call has heard about, the 419 fraud. You might not have heard it by that name, but this is the Nigerian prince scam that this scam's been around for a long time. People used to receive letters in the mail. Well, they've gotten to the modern age and now they're sending messages over social media or email. So we're going to talk about that. And then just fake shopping websites, fake travel scams. Those are truly if it's too good to be true, it probably is a scam. And then I do want to just kind of dip my toe into the world of crypto. Crypto alone could be its own presentation, and maybe that's something that we'll do in the future, the good and the bad. Obviously, today we're more focused on what to look out for with crypto scams. But cryptocurrencies, the blockchain, this is obviously kind of a somewhat of a cutting edge technology that, of course, fraudsters and online criminals are using. So those are the big ones. I'm going to teach everyone what these are. And then at the end, we're going to go a little bit more into the details of how you can take steps to protect yourself and prevent these scams. And then, like I said, we're going to talk about what to do if something happens. So let's talk about the first one, phishing. Again, like I said, I didn't spell that incorrectly. That is really how you spell phishing scams. And most commonly, a phishing scam is when you receive an email, oftentimes from a familiar address or maybe from an email that looks like you might recognize it. And this is when they'll say they've noticed suspicious activity, or maybe they've seen login attempts on your bank account. Most of these scams today revolve around the cyber criminal acting like a good actor. So they're saying, hey, we're on your side. We're here to protect you. We found a problem. That's usually when they're pulling at your heartstrings or they're trying to invoke some sort of emotional response. And they might even send like a link that looks legitimate. Say, click this link so that we can verify that you did not buy this $10,000 computer online. Or they might even send you a fake invoice saying, hey, we got this invoice, but we know it's not you. So just click here and then we'll help you figure out what to do next. Maybe they'll even send you a coupon or something like that. Again, they're either trying to elicit an emotion of fear or trust. They're trying to get your trust very quickly to say, look, we're here to protect you. Well, like I said earlier, you just have to kind of look at these emails very closely. Even though it might look like it's coming from the bank or from a financial institution that you do trust, what you need to really kind of be critical of, and again, these criminals, they're not the brightest bulb in the box here. You got to look for typos or spelling or grammatical errors somewhere in the email. Believe it or not, that's one of the most common giveaways that this is a scam. So, and maybe they spelled your name wrong. Maybe they just put something that doesn't really fit into how we actually would expect to receive an email. And then a really, really good rule of thumb across the board for all the scams that we talk about today, if you just don't feel right about something, never, ever click a link. So they're going to really try to get you to click something to take you somewhere else. Because for the most part, the email that you're in, if it's Gmail or Outlook or just some sort of, maybe it's social media too, that's a relatively safe space from a technology standpoint. They want to get you someplace that's unsafe, and that's usually with a link. And then the other thing that I encourage everyone to do, if you get an email or a text or some sort of phishing message, call the bank, call the financial institution, but don't call the phone number that's in the email. Don't call a number that they gave you. Go online to a website that you trust. If you have one, pull up a phone book, find a phone number, a legitimate phone number, and call that institution and say, hey, I got this email. And they're 99 times out of 100 going to be able to tell you quickly, no, that was not from us. That's not something that we would send. And that's the other thing. I didn't write it on the slide here, but another really good rule to remember is if you receive an email and they're asking you for something, if they're asking you for your social security number or for your bank account number, and maybe they're just saying, hey, we just need to verify it's you, but we need you to type in something, that should be a red flag. A lot of times these financial institutions, they're not going to try and get that kind of information over just regular email. So another awareness kind of tip is if someone's asking you for something and you don't feel like they should be asking it, hang up the phone, delete the email, do whatever you need to do, and then just go and verify. And it might be just walking into your local branch. Again, a lot of these scams, they try to pretend they're calling from your bank, credit union. Go to your bank, call your local branch manager and have a conversation with them. Phishing comes in a lot of different forms. I highlighted the email aspect of this, but just know there's going to be some way or shape or form that a fraudster tries to get your information. And you just have to, again, have that extra antenna up, making sure that you're aware. So phishing started with the most common, seen some head nods. I think this is one that at least maybe you've heard of or you might have experienced. Spam filters on your inbox for email, they do a great job, but it's not going to take care of everything. Okay, this is the other one I want to talk about, the fake family member. And I put this one second because this actually happened to my parents. And this is one it's kind of scary. And it's, for whatever reason, it's on the rise, where you might receive a phone call from someone that you love. And this might be a brother, a sister, or a lot of times what these fraudsters are doing are they're impersonating grandchildren. And the way that they're doing this, it's clever, but in my opinion, it's kind of evil. They'll go online. So if you have a social media presence, if you have a Facebook page, for example, you might share, hey, I just had lunch with my grandson. We had a great time. We went here, blah, blah, blah. You might share just a couple of details, and maybe your grandchild has their own Facebook page. So if any of this information is public, what these scam artists are doing are they're making a fake phone call. They somehow get your phone number, and they pull at the heartstrings. They try to elicit an emotional response, and they create a fake emergency. They'll ask, hey, grandma, grandpa, I got in this terrible accident. I'm in jail. It's a big misunderstanding. I need to make bail. Please wire money here or send a money order. And a lot of times these scam artists are successful because they essentially make it sound very time sensitive, and this is something you have to do. And it might not be jail, it might be a hospital bill, it might be they're trapped in a foreign country and they lost their passport and they need some money to get to the embassy. These are some common examples. This is one where the phishing that we just learned about a second ago, it's kind of easy to step back and maybe look up a phone number or do some research. But this one, you're being pressured. So it's a lot harder to kind of pump the brakes and try to be that objective third party in this scenario. But if you ever do receive a panicked phone call from a family member, I know it's easier said than done, but you've got to resist the urge to act immediately. And the easiest thing to do right there on the spot is just ask a few questions. What's the name of the sheriff's office that you're in? Or hopefully you can ask a question that only the real family member would know. Maybe a childhood nickname or something that you share between them that no one's going to find on Facebook. And then just another kind of rule that's going to go apply to a lot of these lessons today. Definitely never, ever, ever send cash in an envelope, but don't send gift cards. Don't send money over an app. There's a lot of ways to easily send money using your phone, like the Venmos and the Cash Apps of the world. Don't just immediately do that. If possible, politely let that person on the phone know that you need to call a different family member. Or the best thing you can do is if your grandson is calling you, try to call your grandson. The person that's on the phone, if you suspect that might be an imposter, call the real person. If they pick up, they'll instantly verify, oh, wait, no, this isn't the right person. This happened to my dad, and it was a really heartbreaking experience. He got a phone call and they made it sound like it was his granddaughter. Thankfully, he did figure out pretty deep into the conversation that this was not indeed his granddaughter. And he called me and gave me the heads up. So these kind of stories, I hear about them anecdotally, but they did happen to my family personally. And, it's just infuriating to hear. The last story that I'll share about this particular scam is cyber criminals have taken it kind of one step further, where if they can find a public persona online. So again, in that scenario of a grandchild, if your grandchild has a Facebook page or they have some sort of social media where they make videos and they share their voice to the world, these scam artists are now using artificial intelligence to mimic that voice, to make it really not just, sound like it, but they'll have the inflections and the right tone. It'll really sound kind of eerily like the real person. So again, this awareness, I think, is the biggest thing that we can talk about today when it comes to these types of scams. But just be on the lookout. These are happening more and more. All right, shifting gears a little bit. I want to talk about fake tech support, because this is another extremely common cyber crime that's happening across the country, and it's definitely accelerating. But what it is you might receive a phone call or an email, or most commonly a pop-up warning, very similar to the one that you see on the screen there. So this is a screenshot of one of these fake computer warnings. You'll get this window that pops up that says, hey, something happened on your computer. Don't worry, we're on top of it. Call this number and we'll help you get it fixed. So you're seeing a theme here. These fraudsters are trying to at least create the illusion that they're here to help. And sometimes it'll just have a phone number. You call the number and then, then all of a sudden you're stuck into this phone tree. Or it might be where you click on something to download a different link. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But when you get this pop-up, definitely don't call the number. I think that's the no-brainer there. But if you do call the number, and if you get a hold of someone, they're going to sound very convincing that they know your computer, that they know the type of software that you're using. And they're going to say, hey, no problem, I can fix this. Let me just log into your computer. That's called remote support. So kind of get those words saved in your memory there. If someone is offering to remote into your computer, essentially they're asking for you to give permission to completely take over the whole computer. And that should be a red flag right out of the gate. But eventually they're going to say, hey, look, we fixed it. This service isn't free. Please send us some money over a wire or app or gift cards. This is one where you just have to hang up the phone, block the number, maybe even unplug your computer or turn off your Wi-Fi, so that if they do have access to it, just completely shut that off. And then keeping your computer up to date, that's a big part of this. Another theme for the conversation today is if you have legitimate antivirus software, make sure you keep that up to date. But this is one where fraudsters are building. This is a mega million-dollar, mega billion-dollar business in other countries to try and call into people here in the US and convince them to send money. I've got some stories that I'll share at the end that really drives this home, but you might have noticed on some of these screens, I'm saying don't send gift cards. And just saying that out loud, it kind of sounds like a no-brainer. Of course not. But that is one of the most popular forms of fraud. Is a fraudster will convince their victim to go to a store and buy $1,000 worth of gift cards and then just mail those. Or more often than not, they'll just ask you to read the number off of the gift card and they'll instantly take the money. So gift cards is another kind of, put that on the radar as oh, this doesn't sound right if someone's asking to be compensated by gift card. All right, fake antivirus software. This one's very similar to the one that we just looked at, but I did want to break it out because it's a little bit different. Same scenario. You might get a pop-up on your screen saying, hey, you need to get this software on your computer right away because you have a virus. Download the software to fix your computer. Again, they're trying to lead with helping you, with being the good guy, but of course they're the opposite. And sometimes this is called a scareware, where they might really try to just convince you that there's something wrong with your computer. And then of course, when you click that link, that's what actually gives you the computer virus, the malware, or what's called ransomware. And ransomware is kind of the newest and latest version of a virus. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but a ransomware is essentially a virus that gets on your computer that completely shuts down and locks you out of your computer. And then you'll get a phone call or a text or a message asking you to send them money so that they unlock your computer. They're holding your data, your information ransom, and they'll give you the key, of course, if you send them money. Now, fake antivirus software can be really obvious. You can, again, look for typos, look for things that just don't make sense, but it can also be really sneaky. So if you get a link and something pops up and it just doesn't feel right, don't download anything that you're not 100% sure of. And some of these malwares or scarewares, unfortunately, they make it into your computer and maybe you didn't even realize you downloaded it, but nothing bad happens immediately. It might take days or weeks. So this is important. If your computer is running just a little bit weird, if yesterday it was nice and snappy and then today it takes 10 minutes just to open a photo, that could be a sign that you've got maybe some of this malware, some of these viruses running in the background. So going back to what we talked about earlier, keep your computer up to date, keep the software up to date. And then if you do have antivirus software that is from a legitimate source, make sure you keep that as current as possible. All right, I want to talk about one that, I'll be honest, I don't hear about this one too often anymore, but this is one that everyone seems to know about. And the technical name is called 419 fraud. I had to throw that out there because I looked into it. It's called 419 fraud because in Nigeria, they actually had to pass a law to make this illegal. And the name of that law was 419. So that's where this name comes from. But this is the Nigerian print scam. Now, you could receive a letter or an email or a message from a fraudster claiming to be a prince of anywhere. It's just the most common one is the Nigerian prince. And the claim is that you are a long-lost relative or an unknown business partner. Whatever their fabricated story is, you're set to receive a large sum of money. It's usually in the form of an inheritance. Congratulations. They try to build you up, all of these false bravados. But there's always a catch. The catch is to receive this massive sum of money, you just have to send a small little transaction fee just so they can process all the legal paperwork, and then they'll send you the money. Again, this very obviously should be a too good to be true situation. If you receive anything like this, ignore it. I hopefully everyone on this call today knows, don't respond, don't reply, don't write them back thanking them. If you got it as an email, this is one that if you get any sort of suspicious email, but especially these, there should be a spam button or just kind of notify your email that this is not true. And then also, if you want to take this one step further, you can report these to the FBI, to the USPS, the Secret Service, or the Federal Trade Commission. There are ways to report these. Remember those statistics that we looked at earlier? They showed the millions and millions of reports that they received. Well, just think about all the people that did not report these types of scams. And then broken record time, don't send money, don't send money over an app or a wire, do not send gift cards, don't try to interact with these fraudsters at all. I'll share again just a personal story. My dad, I don't know why my dad is the victim here in so many of these stories, but my dad received a letter from China stating that he's the long lost relative of some Chinese businessman that had no family. And my dad immediately knew that this was fraud or an attempt at fraud. And he brought the letter out at a family dinner and we had a good laugh about it. But yes, these can be kind of funny in hindsight, but they are malicious with their intent for sure. All right, so getting to some of the maybe lesser known scams, but these are definitely on the rise, especially since lockdowns from a few years ago when we were all stuck at home. These travel and these shopping scams really started just to take over social media in most of these forms, but also through email, through other ways of communication. But I don't know if you've ever been scrolling, if you do have social media, Facebook, Instagram, all those different sources, and you might see an ad for a beautiful destination, someplace that you've always wanted to go. Or maybe you've been shopping for something and then all of a sudden it's 65% off or more. It's a deal that you've been waiting for. It's finally here. and you click on it. You click that link because you want to go to this dream destination for cheap, or you want to buy whatever it is that you've got your eye on for really cheap. Unfortunately, a lot of these scams, they kind of bait you in, and then they send you to a fake website. And when I mean fake website, I've got the example here on the slide. Let's say that you're trying to shop at Amazon, but all of a sudden it takes you to a website that's Amazon, but instead of an O, they have a zero there. At first glance, you might not notice it. And this is just a hypothetical example, but look at the website you're going to. Is there something a little weird? Does it not match up to what you expected? Those are kind of telltale signs that this is probably fraud. And the other form of this is called form jacking, where it might very much look like a real website that you're at, but when you go to pay, it takes you to this other place that you're not familiar with. Or maybe it's asking you for your credit card information and your social security number and your firstborn's middle name. If those kind of things that you wouldn't expect to type in when you're buying something, that should be another huge red flag that, okay, yeah, this isn't right. And that's, I think some of these are no-brainers in hindsight, but when you're shopping online, you might not be thinking about this unless you have that awareness. Double check the website. Same thing with those emails and the phishing scams. If something's spelled wrong, if something just doesn't look right, if it's too good to be true, it's probably a scam. And with some of these travel scams specifically, they were targeting showing a beautiful place, showing these great, amazing hotel rooms with a view. And turns out it was a real travel company, but when you get there, you're in a basement looking at a brick wall. So if, a $10,000 trip all of a sudden is being offered for $500, that should be hopefully this flashing red light of, okay, this doesn't seem right. Research the company, read the fine print. The scam artists, they got wise where people eventually caught on that this travel destination wasn't real, but what they did up front was sell insurance. $50 will protect you in case the weather's bad for this trip. And those are the ones where you should read the fine print, really understand this travel insurance might not be what you expect. So travel, shopping scams, and this, I'm just talking about the messages you might see on your social media, but if you're doing any sort of like Craigslist or any sort of online shopping at all, just always be aware something might be a little bit off. All right, let's talk about crypto. Cryptocurrencies, the blockchain. I can't, imagine that no one's heard about this. I think this is something that's become very, very prevalent in everyday life. But the dark side of crypto is what I want to focus on in this slide here. Cryptocurrencies seem to be the go-to form of currency that fraudsters and scam artists are using. So I know I've talked a lot about don't send money over wire or gift cards or apps. Cryptocurrency is another kind of just red flag that you should always be hesitant about when someone's asking for payment. And when we think about cybercrime, there's a social engineering aspect to all of this. So social engineering is that classic con artist. They're trying to get your confidence by, like we discussed, building up whatever they're doing for you. They're going to save you. They're going to help you. And social engineering is usually a way for someone to try and learn your private information and eventually maybe your passwords. So if you own cryptocurrency, you probably have a digital wallet. Never ever share that with someone that you don't trust, or just don't ever share that ever. But I bring up crypto when I talk about this is used across all of these scams, phishing scams, and very commonly in romance scams. So this could have been another slide, but I put it on the crypto slide because these romance or these relationship scams are also on the rise. And these are not scams that happen quickly. It's typically over weeks or months or sometimes years where someone will gain your confidence and seemingly become your friend or maybe more. And then, unfortunately, something happens in this person's life where they need help. They need money. A lot of times they're going to ask for that help through cryptocurrency. So I just wanted to emphasize crypto. I think there are a lot of great reasons that it's going to continue and succeed, but there's also these ideas that we need to be aware of, that fraudsters and scam artists do prefer to use cryptocurrencies for their illegal activities. The last thing I'll talk about with crypto is fake crypto. So this is, an investment scam that's been around forever, but someone is promising you returns that are astronomical. Someone is saying, hey, I've got this tip on this next great initial coin offering. That's when someone has a new cryptocurrency. They call it an ICO, an initial coin offering. I think this is the 1,000th time I've said this today, but if it is too good to be true, it probably is. So please, please, please don't put your money into something that you're just completely unfamiliar with. Going back to that digital wallet, like I said, don't give that out to anyone. If someone you met online is asking for financial help, again, I understand it can be an emotional, it can be a difficult decision to say no, but more often than not, it is a scam. If this is a person you've never met in 3D, please be very hesitant. And then on those initial coin offerings, don't believe in the hype. The cryptocurrency, for better or for worse, it's talked about a lot these days. Just try not to buy into the hype of something that maybe is completely unfamiliar or is something that's completely made up. All right, so that was a lot. And I recognize, I understand there's different scams out there. I want to talk about a couple of ones that are on our radar right now that are happening or potentially could be happening. But I want to make sure that everyone leaves this presentation with some tips and a good understanding of what your next steps are if you feel like you might be the victim of one of these scams. So number one, I want to talk about two-factor authentication. And talking about this, I get it. I understand if you've ever logged into a website and then you had to wait to get a text with a secret number so you could type that in, it might feel like a little bit of a hurdle, maybe a little bit of a friction in your daily life. But I just want to emphasize two-factor authentication is extremely useful in fraud prevention, enhanced security. Ultimately, this should give you peace of mind. If anyone doesn't know what this is, really, this is just ensuring that if you enter a password on any website, most websites have the option to set up two-factor. Some websites make you do it, but usually anywhere you enter your password online, if you have this set up, you get a text message. So on your phone, you'll get a secret number. Then you type that number in, and that allows you to log in to your email or to your bank account. Think of it as it turns your phone into almost like a physical key, because you have to have this phone in your possession to get that secret number. Now, two-factor authentication, when it works, it's great. Trust me, with all technology, when something's working, it makes me really happy. But it does slow things down a little bit. I want to be aware of that as well. But if you've been on the fence about setting this up with your bank or with some really important website that you go to, I would encourage everyone just to maybe think about it a little bit more. This might be something that is way more powerful than you think. And ultimately, it could completely prevent a hacker or some sort of cyber criminal to gain access, because they're not going to be able to get that information. And the last thing I'll say about this, if you do have two-factor authentication on, when you get that secret number, if that number pops up on your phone, but you're not trying to log into your account, that's a good warning system that, hey, someone, not me, is trying to log in. I should look into that. And please, 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 never give that secret number to anyone. I know it only lasts for 30 seconds or a minute, but if someone calls you saying, hey, we just sent you a number, please tell it to me, that should be the biggest red flag that something's going on in your accounts. So consider this. I think this is a big one, but also a couple more tips that are just really easy. Strong passwords. Remember when we looked at that evolution of cybercrime over the last 30, 40 years? One of the biggest vulnerabilities in the world of your digital footprint is having a weak password. So I remember seeing these statistics in the 90s and the 2000s where the most commonly used password was the word password. Don't do that. Or password 123. Sorry, that's not going to do it either. Most of the time, websites make you add a number or a capital letter or one of those crazy symbols. that is a great idea. I really, really want to make sure everyone is making their passwords tough, changing them from time to time, and consider using a password manager. This is something we're not going to cover too much today, but there are very legitimate, great websites where you can store your passwords securely and also generate very complicated passwords. So there are ways to kind of offload the heavy lifting when it comes to creating a strong password. Another tip I want to encourage everyone to do and try it. This is when we're done with this presentation, I want everyone to go open their emails, hopefully find an email that you know is from a legitimate source with a link, and don't click on the link. Just hover over it. So you take your mouse and you point it over the link. And this is a really simple but really effective way to look for fraud, because when you hover your mouse over a link, it's going to show you where it's about to take you. So again, don't click it, just put your pointer on top of it. And if the link says it's going to take you to Amazon.com, but when you hover over it, it shows this gobbledygook of a bunch of numbers and letters, or it's going to take you to fraudsters.com or something. That's a really, really quick, fast, safe way to know, oh, that link is not good, not real. Let me not click on that. Delete the email immediately. So hovering over a link, simple, easy, something we can all practice doing. Encourage everyone to do that. I do it on almost every link that I click. That's how paranoid I am these days. And then I threw it on there because this is something, if you've bought a house or sold a house or did anything in real estate over the last few years and you had to deal with a title company, an escrow company, escrow wire fraud is one of the worst crimes that we're seeing today. And essentially what happens is when you sell your home or when you buy your home, you have to deal with a wire company. And these fraudsters, these scam artists are kind of coming in during that transaction period by sending you a fake email saying, hey, here are the wire instructions, send your money here to finish buying your house. Well, thankfully, title and escrow companies are catching on to this. And when you have a conversation, either face-to-face or maybe over Zoom with the escrow company, they're going to tell you probably 3, 4, 10 times, look out for fake escrow emails. So escrow is another really kind of vulnerability right now for whatever reason for fraudsters. They're trying to pounce on this. Just be very, very cautious. And share this with your friends and your family. Anyone that's out there right now shopping for a house and they're about to make one of the biggest purchases of their life, make sure that when it comes time to send that extremely large wire, that they pump the brakes, they slow down, and they double, triple check everything is up to par. So we've talked a lot about what the scams are. We've talked a lot about how to prevent them, but I do want to share what should you do, or what are some of your options if you do believe your identity has been stolen or your financial and personal information has been accessed. So number one, stop all communication with the scammer. It might be tempting once you realize you're being scammed that you want to give that person a piece of your mind, or you want to try and maybe get back the money yourself. I'll tell you, it's just not going to happen. It might feel therapeutic for a second, but it usually just causes more harm than good. So stop communication with anyone that you believe might be trying to access your information. Change your passwords, and definitely change your password at the website that got hacked. But if you're using that same password or a similar password at other sites, go to all those different websites, change your password everywhere. That's really, really important. And that's something you can do immediately. If you believe someone has access to your financial accounts, your bank account, contact that financial institution, let them know. Same thing goes here. If you believe anything fishy has been going on, give us a call and we can talk through this. We can make sure we put up the proper protections in place. This is optional, but I encourage you to report the scam to the authorities. If this resulted in a financial loss for you, you're going to want to have a police report. Or if someone attempted to steal your information, but they didn't get anything, that's great, but still you can report it to the FTC or the FBI. Again, remember those statistics I showed earlier, that's from people that reported these crimes. And then document everything. So if you are unfortunately the victim of financial loss, you're going to want to document everything. Save a copy of that email or that text message, or if someone contacted you on social media, maybe take a screenshot of that. Just document everything from start to finish, and that'll help with the investigation. And there's always the chance that maybe some of these funds can be recovered later. Again, it's unlikely that you'll be completely made whole again if this is a fraudster that took a large sum of money. Now, banks and credit card companies and debit cards, a lot of them do have these insurances built into when you use the card. And if a fraudster uses it, you may be reimbursed, but a lot of times you're going to have to prove that that wasn't you. So document everything. And then the last thing I've got on that list, number 6, check your credit and consider freezing your credit. So if a fraudster's accessed your social security number, your birth date, and they've tried to open an account or maybe open a line of credit in your name, anything that has to do with your credit report, you can check it. You can stay on top of that. There is a free way to do that. So annualcreditreport.com is a great way for you to log in and just say, yep, that's my credit card, that's my bank, that's my address, everything looks good. When you look at your credit report, if all of a sudden you see 2 or 3 or 4 credit cards that you have no idea where those came from, that's a way for you to be at least a little proactive on getting those fraudsters shut down. What I want to just caution you against is freezing your credit unnecessarily. So checking your credit, great, totally do that. When you freeze your credit, that's when you contact the 3 different credit bureaus, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. When you call them and tell them to freeze your credit, that locks down anything to do with your credit score, which, if you're retired and you're not buying and selling a lot of things using credit, maybe it's not a big deal. But I will tell you, if you're someone that regularly needs to have their credit checked, and this could be something as simple as buying and selling a house because you need to get a loan, or maybe you're getting a credit check done because you just got a new job and the employer is doing a background check. Freezing your credit is relatively easy. Unfreezing your credit can be really difficult and time consuming. So I'll say freezing your credit is one of the best ways to completely lock down your credit identity, but it can be very, very difficult to unwind that. And again, if you don't access your credit very often and you just want to make sure no one uses your social security number for something, freezing your credit could be a good option. The other thing that people consider, if you have a young child, or if you are a guardian of someone that is a minor, so under 18, consider freezing their credit. Maybe when they're 5, 6, 7 years old, I don't think they're going to be getting a lot of credit cards. But unfortunately, fraudsters and identity thieves, they're targeting young individuals. If they get a social security number of a 10-year-old, they're going to use that to open all these lines of credit. And oftentimes the parent, and of course that minor, they're not going to figure that out until they're 18. So freezing your credit, it's pretty intense. It works in some situations, usually for those that don't need to access their credit very often, or for minor kids. So these are the tools that you have at your disposal. I want to throw it out there again. We're here to help. If you think that we can assist you and point you in the right direction, or if you just want to talk about, wait, should I freeze my credit? Should I not? We can talk through that with you. The last thing is you could sign up for an identity theft protection service. I know a lot of banks, a lot of credit unions offer this now. Maybe it's tied into, it's an add-on package at, I'm just going to make up some numbers. Maybe it's $15 a month, and then they'll monitor your credit constantly. So if something happens, they send you a message. That's an option. There's some great reputable resources out there. If you want to just pay the extra, it's like a subscription fee each month. That's an option as well. So let's talk about what's around the corner. Now, I say this all the time in my daily life. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen in the stock market or the economy. Same thing goes for cybercrime. But, we can think about what's happening now and then kind of the direction we're headed. Right now, I did want to bring up the National Public Data Breach. This made a ton of headlines a month ago. National Public Data is this huge company that does background checks. And unfortunately, their entire data got completely stolen. And there are some news articles saying that almost every American has their information now out there on the dark web. And that might be true. The good news is National Public Data, on their website, you can check to see if your name was part of the leak. And you can type in your name and your birth date, and they'll tell you, yes, unfortunately, your information was a part of the leak. Again, if you want to talk through this, happy to chat through how to check that. But this is just something that's currently happening right now. I encourage everyone to go double check just to see if their name was on there. If you do find your name on their leak, that doesn't necessarily mean a fraudster has it or a fraudster is going to use it, but that potential is out there. There were some numbers that millions or maybe billions of people's information were leaked in this breach. It's good to be aware if your name is on there. And then, of course, we can talk about steps to take if you want to take some extra protection. But with the rise of artificial intelligence, we talked about how fraudsters are using that for voice mimicking, blackmail, fake sting operations. This is another just anecdotal story I wanted to share that I learned of someone that received a phone call from law enforcement that was conducting a sting operation on the bank. In other words, they were calling them so that they can be a part of this super secret operation to test if a bank has enough security. So they asked this individual to go to their bank, withdraw a large sum of money in cash, and then come home, and then report back how it went. They sounded official. They sounded like a real police officer was making this call. Thankfully, this individual, all of a sudden, they got their antennae up when the fake police officer said, "Great, I'm going to come around to your house to collect the cash. I'll put it back in your bank account and I'll give you a receipt." That that was the red warning flag that all of a sudden this individual said, "This isn't real." They called their bank. They realized it wasn't real, put the money right back in there. But this just goes to show a lot of these cyber crimes are relatively high tech, but some of them are just very low tech. But because your information is out there on the web, they're using that to social engineer some of these scams. Really, that's what it is. And then with the world of computing just accelerating, who knows what's around the corner. Everything we talked about today hopefully gave you some confidence and you're motivated to make sure you're doing everything you can, but it's a lot. So I just wanted to share, if you signed up for this course, we are going to send you a checklist. Financial Insights has this amazing checklist. Are you at risk of having your identity stolen? And it's just, you go through this, ask yourself some questions. It's a great exercise, grab a cup of coffee and just go through these yes or no questions. If any of these questions are concerning, or if you just don't know how to answer them, again, we're a great resource. Talk with us. We can help you go through this. But I wanted to give everyone here a tool. I'm a big checklist guy, so that you can kind of just self-examine what your digital life, your digital footprint looks like right now. So we'll send this out to everyone. Of course, if you have questions, let me know. We're coming up. I was going to try and save 15 minutes. We got 5 minutes. Are there any questions? Is there any stories anyone wants to share? Has anyone gone or experienced some of these? I don't know. Kind of opening the floor up to everyone.
Our last Wisdom and Wealth speaker series is going to be in October, and Medicare and Social Security will be the topic. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody then and close out our 2024 year together. Thank you so much for supporting our finance professionals in the Tacoma and Pierce County and other communities, and educate with us as we learn about all things finance, estate, and tax. So we'll look forward to seeing you all in the future.
Good day.
Thank you.